Subscribe, please.
Hey guys! Happy Halloween from the Gimpys. Mr. Gimpy himself and Gimpys Gal here. Welcome if you're new, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back. This is, first off, like right up front, I want to say this is not a gaming video. This is not talking about games or talking about the channel or anything gaming related. But if you like Halloween, you like spooky things, or if you just find us entertaining, then continue to watch this. I personally am fascinated by this subject, and being that we've lived and experienced what we've experienced with this, we just thought it would be fun and fitting for the season to tell it. So it's just for fun. Take it as you wish. If you don't believe in this kind of stuff, that's perfectly fine. We're just telling you our experience, and keep in mind that we both experienced this.
Well, not every single bit, but
most of the big things we were together, experiencing them together.
Some of the stuff I mentioned before, I think on one of your painting videos, you kind of talked about some of the stuff. But we thought in the spirit of the season, it would be fun to go ahead and do a quick little haunted stories. So we're just going to talk about our experiences while we were living in a haunted house.
Yeah.
And I know some people don't believe in haunted houses. And I'll tell you, we absolutely believe in them. Because how long did we live in that house? Like 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
It was 2008, right?
2008 to 2013, so 5 years.
Yeah, so we lived in a haunted house for 5 years, and I guarantee you could feel it. There was like this heavy weight in the house.
When people who, I'm sure you've seen other people talk about their experiences with the supernatural, whatever you want to call it, paranormal, supernatural, the other realm, ghosts, whatever. I don't know what I believe they are, but I believe that there is something out there. And when you hear people talk about how it's just a feeling that you get, or you feel like you're not alone, that's 100%. And if you've never experienced it, you're not going to get it. You're not. That's why I said take this for what for a grain of salt. Like, we're not saying that you have to believe that everything that we're talking about is 100% proof that supernatural things exist. If we can debunk them, or when we were having these experiences, that's the first thing we would try to do. And most people in those situations, when something's happening, the first thing you want to do is find a logical explanation for it, because the alternative is scary as hell. So we have to backtrack for this, because I personally believe if you're open to this stuff, if you believe in it, it kind of makes you a magnet. And I think they can sense that.
Well, if you
But I do want to say, before we start filming it, this is not an invitation for anything. This is not us trying to reach out to anything or open anything. We have had no contact, no issues since we moved. We want to keep it that way.
Some people might think she's kind of weird for saying that. But after the stuff, it wasn't like Amityville Horror or anything to that level. But after going through some of it and just that palpable feeling.
It's just the feeling. It's just the dread. It's just
you don't want to go through it again.
No.
So
no.
we've
we've
taken steps to avoid that in every house we've moved into since. And you could feel it.
Yeah.
When we moved out of that house, it was like a weight lifted.
It was bad. So what I was saying about if you're open to it, I think whatever it is can sense it. I say that because both of us experienced some slight things before we lived together at our respective homes. Nothing major. One of them, we were dating, and this was at my parents' house, the one that I grew up in. And it was like, we were dating, we were getting ready for dinner, and I have a younger brother. Both of our bedrooms were upstairs, and then like a master bedroom and a kitchen, living room on the main floor. And then there was a basement, like a finished basement. And we were sitting in the living room, and my family had finished, and they're like, go get your brother. It's time for dinner. And we heard him, before she said this, we could hear him upstairs, like jumping on his bed.
Yeah, moving around.
Like, it sounded like he was on his bed jumping, or that he was jumping on the floor. Like, he was being very loud, jumping around, very obviously in his bedroom. And so I call up, I'm like, come on, dinner's ready, you need to come down. And we waited for a couple of seconds, and then we hear footsteps coming from the basement, and the basement door flies open.
Like,
and my
I
brother
freak
comes.
out. Like,
and he freaks, thinking that someone's broken into our house, or something's coming from downstairs that shouldn't be there.
Your mom's house.
This is my mom's house. When we see that it's him, we all, not just me, not just him, but my family that was there as well, kind of were like, did you not hear him upstairs jumping. We're like, were you upstairs jumping? Were your friends upstairs jumping? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that was the first thing that we experienced with multiple people where we were like, we couldn't think of a logical explanation to what that was. And if you could, it wasn't just like, the air conditioning making things move around. It was very
Anyone who's
loud.
been in a house that has a few years on it, you can tell the difference between footsteps, like a human's footsteps.
Yeah,
or
he had
something
that
like
at his
that.
grandparents' house. There was a very distinct sound of footsteps. You could tell when certain people were walking.
Can I tell?
Yeah, but I was just explaining what the sound you were talking about.
I was at my grandparents' house, and this is when I was younger. I was a teenager at this point, and my whole family was out. It was just me in the house, and I'd been gone. I'd stopped back by the house, and I was there to pick up something. And when I was in the basement, I knew I was the only one there. No other cars were there, and I hear very distinctive footsteps walking around in the upper floor. And I'm like, who the hell is in the house? And I'm like, okay, there's no one here. I guarantee you there's no one here. I'm like, I can either take and go upstairs and investigate, or I can leave and let my grandparents come home and let them figure it out. Me being the teenager that I was at the time I left. And cell phones weren't prevalent then, so I just came back, a few minutes later, and they were home, and they're like, nothing going on. What are you so freaked out about? And I'm like, ghost is here. He's wandering around. I wasn't even thinking about, like, it could have been a robber. And it wasn't. There was nothing missing or out of place, but it was very distinctive footsteps moving around.
Same thing at my mom's. It was very obviously something moving around. It wasn't a creak. It was very loud, obvious sounds. So that's what I mean when I say we both had experiences, and that's not the only thing that happened to me or him. Growing up, we both had little things here and there. We don't have to get into those, but just to give you an idea that we both believe in it, we're both open, used to be open to it, are not open to it anymore, but we used to be. So I think that might have made whatever it was that we moved into worse.
No, whatever is there is there.
No, whatever is there, but I mean the fact that we believed in it, the fact that we acknowledged it sometimes, I think made it louder and more active because it knew that we were paying attention. It knew we believed in it, and it knew we wouldn't just write it off. So it was more active. So I'll tell the background of the house, like what house it is, and then we'll take turns telling things that happened to us there. Okay.
Go ahead.
So we were engaged at this point. This was in 2008. We'd been together for a while. We'd gotten engaged, and we were going to get an apartment. And I was so ecstatic. This was like the first time I was moving out on my own with my fiance. I was so excited, moving right up the street from my best friend, like 2 doors up from her. So excited. And one of his family members found out we were going to be getting this apartment. It was kind of far away from where we both worked, but it was a very reasonable price. And we were both just happy to have a
Reasonable
place.
is code word for cheap.
It was very cheap, but it wasn't a bad place. It was like a little private owned kind of like 1 or 2 bedroom place. It was very first apartment-esque. So we had signed everything. We're ready to move into that place. And his family found out that we were going to be doing this. And one of his family members, I'm not going to say relationships just because, but one of his family members owned a house, actually owned a few houses that they weren't living in, but they couldn't sell. And this house that we ended up moving into is one of them. And basically his family kind of talked to each other and kind of said, hey, they're going to be renting an apartment. Your house is just sitting there empty and you can't sell it. Why not let them rent? It'll help them out. It'll help you out. Bada bing, bada boom. They agreed. We moved in. It had been empty for how long before we moved in?
Like a
few years.
I mean, maintained.
Yeah, like they came by, but no one had lived in the house for a few years. So the reason it was empty and the reason they couldn't sell it is because it was essentially 2 lots, with one lot having this massive, bigger than the house garage that his family member used for like storage and woodworking, and they were very wealthy, obviously. So it was just because that building was next to this lot, it made it to where it kind of counted the whole thing as one lot. So he would have to sell the house and the garage. He could not sell the house without selling the garage with it. They were a combo deal just based on the county. And he didn't want to get rid of his garage. So that's why it sat there empty for so long. We have our other
Love
reasons
shack.
too. Yeah. But anyways, so we moved in.
And I
Nothing.
will tell you, no, it started pretty much right off the bat, but we didn't realize what was going on because we moved in, right? And there was a feeling in the house, but I think our euphoria of being a young couple that was newly engaged and we're living together and we're playing house together and aren't we so grown up was kind of outweighing the negativity that was in the home.
Yeah, I don't remember feeling anything in the beginning, but I think...
No, there was stuff happening, but we weren't picking up on it. Because I remember laying in bed and asking you about the bumps. And it was right after we moved in, we were hearing the knocks in the house. And what would happen is if we were... The house was like 2.5 floors. It had a bottom floor.
It was a split level.
Yeah, split level home. It had a bottom level and then this mid level that was in between the bottom level and the top level, and the middle level had the living room.
I can tell the layout better. You're like, it had a bottom level and then it had a middle level that was in the middle of the top and the bottom. Okay.
Yeah,
the bottom level had a finished den, which in the south is just a living room. Okay. It also had a garage, and that was the room that we did all of our, like, that was like our main living room. There was some stairs right off of that and a little awning that went up into the kitchen. So the kitchen was kind of open from the downstairs den. And then there was like a dining room and another formal living room on that middle floor. And then the front door and then some stairs that went up to the top floor where the 3 bedrooms were. And there was 2 bathrooms, and then the attic was up there as well.
Yeah.
That's the layout of the house.
But the knocks started from moment one. If we were in the top floor in the master bedroom, we would hear these bumps coming from the far side of the house down near what sounded like the formal kitchen or formal dining room kitchen area.
It started, it was more sporadic, right? It wasn't, it was
we
more...
thought like some loud car driving by, what's going on. And early on I would get up and I would look around and I wouldn't find anything, and it always stopped whenever I would go, but then it would pick back up. And there was always this sense of unease.
But I heard it first before you.
See, she's always got to be first.
No, I didn't want to be. I remember crying because he's the type of person that hits the pillow and he's out. I mean, we're talking 30 seconds, he's out. So when it started, yes, it would be little bumps here and there, but it started to become every night, and it became every night, all night. And it even got so loud at times that you could feel the vibrations of the knocking in the bed. Like, it wasn't like our bed was rocking and shaking and swaying us all around, but you could feel the movement. It was that hard on the walls. And I would try to wake him up, and he is a sound sleeper when it comes to me. I could literally crawl across him and he will not budge. If someone else who's a stranger walks into our room or walks by the front of our house at night, boom, he's up. But me, I could jump on the bed and he's not going to budge.
Remember when we got Molly and I wasn't used to our little dog being in the house, and she jumped off the bed and her paws hit the floor and I had the gun pointed at her.
So he's a sound sleeper, very, very sound sleeper. And I heard it, and I was crying trying to wake him up, and he just wasn't budging. And so finally, I guess he had heard it, and it came up, and we had both heard it, and we didn't know what it was. We did ask his aunt. Well, I shouldn't have said who. We did ask his family member what this was. Was there something going on in the house? Like, did they ever hear anything weird? What was up with the air conditioning? Like, what was it? Because at this point, we had gotten our 2 dogs. When we first moved in, we did not have them. So we thought, okay, it's the dogs, even though I think it was happening before we got the dogs. We thought it was the dogs. So we moved them to our room, and it continued. Mm-hmm. Literally everything you could think of, we would try to figure out. And the only other option was to leave out a recorder, and we did not want to do that.
The thing is the sound changed. It would change locations depending on where we were. If we were downstairs in the den or in the kitchen, it would be upstairs in the master bedroom. But if we were upstairs in the master bedroom or in the computer room, which was across the hall, then it would be downstairs in the den kitchen area. So the knocking would always be on the opposite side of the house, and it would literally, like, you would go to investigate the sound, and then it would start right back up where you just were, and it's like it was trying to mess with you. And we ignored it for the first little bit. And for the first period that we were living there, for the most part, it was just the uneasy feeling, the feeling of being watched, and the knocks that we kept trying to track down but never could. And then I remember that over time, it slowly started to pick up and get worse and worse and worse. And the hallway leading to the bedrooms and the master bedroom was one of the worst places. Like, I'm not scared of the dark, but I refuse.
Yes, he is.
No,
yes.
I'm not scared of the dark.
That's his life face. He's afraid of the dark. I'm calling you out.
I was scared of the dark in that hallway. For some reason, I refused to go through that. I'm sure plenty of people have had that. Shut up. You're killing me. I've had that experience where you're going through this area and you just have that sense of unease, like someone is watching you or staring at you or something's getting ready to happen. And I would always make sure to cut that light on and remember that hallway light blew out 1,000 times while we lived there. For some reason.
Yeah, no other light in that house blew out
like
as many times as that one did. I swear to you.
It was weekly.
It was. Every week, that light bulb would blow out. And yes, it was an old house. So we chose to say, it's just bad wiring. But this family that owned this house was rich. They had everything checked out. Like, logically, we knew it probably was not that. And with everything else happening, there was too many things happening for it to all be coincidence. But that hallway was bad. There was this weird closet at the very end. It was one of those hallways that, like, as you're coming up the stairs, it almost looks like it's getting longer or it's coming closer.
Yeah,
and the attic door
kind of feel to it.
The attic door was above that closet, like the pull string attic drop top, terrifying attic space was at the end of the hallway. So going to our bedroom, which was at the end of that hall, right on the other side, like the attic was right outside of our bedroom, going to our bedroom or coming, it was always like, I don't know how to explain it, but I that fear that something's behind you, something's going to jump out from behind you, something's chasing you.
That constantly.
And it was a negative. It wasn't like if you're playing hide and seek with someone, you're like, oh, I'm so, someone's chasing me. Oh, no, it was very negative. It was very dark. And it was not fun. And we were not the only ones. When we had people come and stay with us, they would hear things. They would sense things.
They wouldn't sleep in that spare bedroom.
They would not sleep in our spare bedroom. I don't know why. I slept in it one night with my brother or my sister who spent the night. They were really young. One of them spent the night. We stayed in the spare room. And it sounded like he was walking up and down the hallway all night. And I remember the next morning being like, what were you doing? Like, why were you walking up and down the hall all night? Because we couldn't fall asleep. We kept hearing you go back and forth in front of that door.
In fact, the only person who ever slept through that night in that room without pitching a fuss about it or giving up and leaving was my brother. And I think part of it had to do with the fact that, he was a Marine like me, so he's pretty tough. Don't let him know that I said that. But he was also really drunk. So I think he just passed out.
No, your sister and her husband at the time slept in it for our wedding with their baby, but there was a baby.
But
so
they weren't comfortable in there.
I don't remember if they were or they weren't. I'm just saying it could be that whatever it was just like to mess with people. Maybe it wasn't anything. Maybe that one wasn't. There's multiple things in that house, okay?
No, it's the dark guy. Because we saw him. All right, we're getting to the point where
we're kind of going back and forth because we both like to tell it from our point of view. But let's hit the main things of what happened.
So there was that handful of things that happened in that house that really just set us on edge. That it was like, okay, we have no explanation for this. You can account for knocking. You can account for a strange feeling.
Yeah, light blowing out. Like, okay, electrical.
You can account for all of those things. But there are some things that you absolutely cannot account for. It is just flat paranormal and freaking creepy. All right. I'll tell the one of us going to the bedroom and the stuff falling down. All right.
All right, I'll tell.
We were going to bed one night, and as we were walking up that demonic freaking hallway, we get into our bedroom and we shut the door, and you would always shut that door quick and lock it. Like you felt like you were shutting something out.
I know you all know what he's talking about. You have all been somewhere or lived somewhere
creeping.
And there's a part of it, whether it's your basement or your attic or a certain room that you just don't like, or maybe you don't like moving from your car to your front door and you run super quick and you close it. And it was like that. I mean, you didn't want to have your back to that attic space, especially, but to the hallway. I mean,
it was like the horror movie where you felt like the hand was right here.
Like as soon as you would hit our door, because here's the hallway, okay? At the very end of the hallway was the closet. Here's the attic above it. On this side of the hallway was our bedroom, and on this side was the spare bedroom. Then there was another room here, bathroom here, and then the stairs. So it was not a very long hallway. But as soon as we would
Felt
hit...
like it was miles.
Yeah, as soon as we would hit the end and turn to go to our room, like to open our door, you would feel it. You would feel it right here. You would feel like, okay, one of these times something is going to happen. I'm going to get yanked into the attic. I'm going to get yanked down the stairs. Something's going to happen.
I always turned around and I would look down the hall and I would expect to see someone there. Like, it just felt that strong. But anyway, we got into the room and we shut the door. And as we're getting ready to go to bed, we hear this loud crash.
And I have to say this part, though. This did not happen as soon as the door closed. Okay?
Yes, it wasn't slammed.
In the bedroom for probably a minute, maybe 2 minutes. We had started doing our nightly routine of brushing teeth and changing. It wasn't shut the door, boom, this happened. We'd been in there for a couple of minutes when this next thing happened.
So we hear the crash and I'm like freaked out. She's freaked out and she's
the floor
whimpering.
like shook from it too. Remember, we both kind of looked like, what the hell was
big
that?
wham.
The dogs are growling.
I grab a gun and, I'm at the position. I open the door and I'm creeping and I'm expecting there's someone there. They tripped, whatever.
What I thought it was going to be was the attic. I thought the stair from the attic was going to be falling.
Oh yeah, I remember she was saying
I was like, don't open the door.
If,
no.
if the attic's down, like it's
I'm
just
out.
over. She's like, I'm moving out.
We had seen Paranormal Activity, the very first one, the best one. We had seen it. So when that happened, I remember saying like, no, it's going to be the attic. It's the attic. We're leaving. We're moving.
If it was the attic door being down, she was just...
I was going to leave in the middle of the night.
But I opened the door and the attic was up. But as soon as I opened the door, I see our family portrait. It was in this picture frame and it had multiple pictures in it. And it was across the hall on the ground, broken. So
it was outside of our bedroom. Remember I told you our bedroom was on the left side of the hallway? It was right outside up on the wall, and it had been up for months. We'd been living there for about a year when this happened.
Yeah,
it had been up
there
since we
quite a while.
moved in.
And it's across the hall and broken. And the thing of it was, what really freaked me out is not the fact that it fell.
Yeah.
The fact that had it just fallen, it would have just gone straight down and hit the ground. And if it had broke, it'd have been fine, but it would have been on that side of the hall. Instead, it was on the other side of the hall. And the nail that was holding it up was still up and still in its firm position. Like, it wasn't wiggling. It had no wiggle
It was
room.
one of those hooks that, like, this is the nail, and then it had a hook like this. It was kind of angled into the wall. It was like
it was
very
solidly
sturdy.
into the stud. That nail wasn't going anywhere. So the only way to get that picture frame off the wall would have been to hit it from underneath to knock it off the hook.
Because the hook did not break either. The hook on the frame was in place as well. There was nothing on the wall or on the frame that was broken.
So we had like no explanation for that one of why the hell did this get knocked down, because it should realistically still be up.
Yeah, we're not like instantly going to jump to like, oh my God, it's a ghost. Oh my God, it's this. No. But when you look at the way that it was on the wall, it had been there for a while. We had been in the room for a while, and that it did not slide down the wall. It didn't like slide, hit, and then kind of just fall over. It was face down across the hall.
Yeah.
That doesn't, how would it fall face down across the hallway? There's no way except for something to have forcefully pushed it over there. And the fact that it was, I think, one of the only pictures that we had hanging up in that house that had pictures of us in it. I mean, honestly, think about it.
We didn't have too many.
We did not have, at that time, I don't think we were married yet, we did not have any other pictures up of anything besides like decorative things.
So tell about one of the other things that happened to us.
Because of that, not just that, but because of that and all the feelings we would feel, and the fact that when we were in our room, the knocking on the walls seemed to be the loudest and the worst, we would sleep in our downstairs den. So the very bottom level finished den. We would sleep down there a lot and spend a lot of time down there because it seemed safer. The safest at that time. Like, it just seemed like the least amount of activity would happen when we were there. So the next few things happened there. I'm going to tell the one where you say shut up, and then you can tell the one with Molly. So...
Oh, before she gets in this, a key point is when you were in that downstairs den, our dogs would sit at the bottom of the stairs and look up into the kitchen. And you can tell when a dog is looking at something, they would both just look and their heads would follow something. They wouldn't bark at it, but they would sit there, and occasionally, I mean, they would bark at it where they would, it's like, no, they would bark. Well, they would watch it, but sometimes they would growl, and then occasionally they'd let out a roar, at whatever it was, but they were watching something.
And they were puppies too.
Yeah, and we just had to ignore them, okay, we're not paying attention to the dogs because they're watching something.
The kitchen was completely open and visible from the den. There was just this open set of stairs, and then it was open, so you could see up there. You could see every part of the kitchen from
and you always felt like you were being watched from there.
So this particular night, the dogs were sitting at the foot of the stairs, looking up into the kitchen, growling and barking, and just watching. And we could hear things knocking about in the kitchen.
And it
wasn't
got loud.
anything crazy. It wasn't like cabinets were opening and closing. But it was just very obvious something was trying to get our attention. Something was knocking about in there. Like if you kind of bump a cabinet that there's glasses in, you'll hear them kind of clink a little bit. That kind of thing just continued going on.
And it kept getting louder.
I think then the lights
was mad because we were ignoring it.
The lights would start to kind of dim. That in the kitchen lights had a dimmer on them, but we never used the dimmer. But they would flicker, they would get really dark and get really bright, and it was doing that night. Just a lot of stuff going on in the kitchen that night. We were just sitting in the living room, minding our business. I think he was playing on the Xbox or something. I was watching a show or something on a laptop. That was our typical night. We were newly married, no kids. We spent a lot of time kind of side by side watching what we wanted to watch, but that's what we love to do. And this stuff in the kitchen is just getting louder and louder. It's starting to agitate the dogs more. It's starting to get to the point where we can't just ignore it. It's just getting so loud. And whatever it was not going to stop. It just kept. Oh. Heart attack. Stop fidgeting.
Sorry.
So, right now I was building to the part of the thing too. So it kept getting louder and louder. He looks up from his game and he says, would you please, or I don't know, he didn't say please, would you just shut the hell up? Just knock it off. I don't know if that's verbatim what he said, something along those lines. Basically, shut the hell up. We don't care what you have to say, shut up. I kid you not, and I know you're all going to think we're lying about this. I would put my hand on a Bible and swear that this happened as accurately as I'm going to tell it right now. This is what happened. He says, shut the hell up. Everything in our den. Now, our den did not have a light source on the ceiling. We had lamps.
A couple of lamps in there.
So that were attached to a light switch. So there was a couple of lamps. There was our TV. There was Xbox and a cable box that emitted light that were on in this area. When he said shut up, everything in the den only, not in the kitchen, in the den.
Yeah, kitchen light was still
shut
on.
off. Kitchen light's still on. TV's off. Both lamps are off. And we're like, what the hell? But in the darkness, and now keep in mind, this only happened in a matter of a few seconds. But when the lights shut off, we both notice that the cable box and the Xbox are still powered on because the time is showing on the cable box and the Xbox light is still on, the controller is still on. So
yeah, everything was still on.
Everything that emitted light
cut off,
and it was pitch black. And I look at him. And he very, very quickly says, I'm sorry. Keep doing what you're doing. Please. I am sorry. Please cut the lights back on. We're sorry.
I was I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I apologize. I am sorry.
And the TV cuts on. The lamps come on. Everything's fine.
We looked at each other oh my God.
We both, I think, were kind of in disbelief. We didn't even talk about it. I think at that point, we stopped talking about it. Because when we talked about it, it got worse. So we stopped talking about it. But later, when we were outside, we talked about, there was no explanation. It wasn't a power surge because the kitchen lights were on. It wasn't the whole neighborhood flickered.
You can hear her. She sounds
tense
right now, doesn't she?
It still terrifies me just to talk about it because I'm a firm believer when you talk about it, things can happen. And that's why I said in the very beginning, this is not an invitation.
On the bright side, we are moving, so it'll stay here.
But it was genuinely terrifying. And to me, what was so scary about that particular one was it was a direct reaction to something we said. It wasn't just, if you're a big paranormal buff, there's things that they call residual hauntings and there's things they call intelligent hauntings. And residual is where something people believe, it's just replays itself over and over again, whatever it may be. It's just, it doesn't know you're there. It doesn't really know it's there. It just kind of is living its life out over and over again. Intelligent is just that. It interacts with you. It can touch you. It can respond to you. And
yeah, it
that definitely did. And We continued to sleep in the living room after that because I think we still thought it was upstairs. But things got worse after that point.
The thing about sleeping in the living room is that we both, like, whoever was closer to the side near the kitchen, near those stairs, would always have nightmares, and you would always wake up.
No, not nightmares. Night terrors. Sleep paralysis.
Yeah, where you would be awake for all intents purposes, but you couldn't move, and there would always be this black figure that you could see, like, standing there looking at you, and you couldn't tell, like, any features, but you could always see, like, just a black figure. And it drove us crazy because we couldn't get away from this thing, but we knew that's what it was.
And we had a couch and this chair, and the chair is the chair that had its back. This is what he's talking about. But the person sleeping on the couch, best night's sleep we'd had in a while. No issues, no scary dreams, no bad feelings. Like, it was almost like somebody would sit in that chair and sleep in that chair and sacrifice their night so the other person could get one good night's sleep on the couch. Because every single time I slept in that chair, I had sleep paralysis, and I never, ever had sleep paralysis before I lived in that house. Ever. I think maybe I did have it one time with another paranormal thing that I experienced. But aside from that, it wasn't something that I ever regularly experienced. And I experienced it every time I slept in that chair, to the point where we would wake ourselves up saying the Lord's Prayer or singing Jesus Loves Me, or like, it was that terrifying. And we both felt and saw the same thing in our night terrors.
Yeah, the black figure. All right, I'll tell you one more thing, because we're getting kind of long-winded on our stories here, but one other thing that happened to us that there's literally no explanation for, like, just cannot be explained, was we had, in that same den that we're talking about, there was a coffee table in the middle of it, and anyone who has a coffee table understands the coffee table is a catch-all, all right? So anything and everything will be on a coffee table. And we were sitting there one evening, we were watching TV.
Trying to find something to reenact it with.
Here, I can use this. And our dog's collars, I think we had given them a bath earlier that day. So our dogs
No, it was like earlier that week. Like, I don't think she
whatever. It doesn't matter.
No, because the point is that collar had been there for a while. It had been there for a couple of days.
Well, it doesn't matter. But the point is that the collars were sitting on one end of the coffee table, and we're sitting there watching TV, just relaxing, and all of a sudden, collars take and...
No, it was just Molly's collar. It wasn't both of them. It was just hers.
Yeah, well, Molly's collar nudged Rocco's collar that it was sitting on top of as it went down and came over to here. But it moved very clearly on its own from one side of the table to the other. And this wasn't like we looked away and then it wasn't where we thought it was. We both physically watched it move on its own from one side of the table to the other. No explanation.
Yeah, and the reason that I emphasized that it had been there for a while was because, like he said, it was a catch-all. It wasn't on top of the pile of magazines. It was almost kind of partially under some of the magazines. So it wasn't even in a position that it would have easily slid off, or us bumping the table could have caused it to slide off, or we had just thrown it there and it was just kind of settling. You know, sometimes if you throw something on a table, it'll move a little bit. It had been there for a while. It was underneath a couple of things. So it didn't make sense. The air had not cut on, but even if it had cut on,
what air conditioner is going to move a collar?
And it wasn't. It literally was like this. I mean, no joke. It wasn't like it flew across. It wasn't like it barely moved. It went from one side to the other side, almost super deliberate, like it wanted to make sure that we saw it. What freaks me out, I don't know if you remember this or realize this, what freaks me out the most about that is that he had told me not long before that happened that he had a night, when he was in that chair, he'd had like a night terror or a sleep paralysis thing about Molly, where we were down there in that room and I don't know what had happened, and next thing he says something to it like, if you're here, show me, and it picks up Molly and she basically got killed by whatever it was in his night terror. And then a few days later, her collar deliberately scoots across the table. It just was a constant, like, messing with us. And, like, it knew that we were trapped there because this is the house we lived in when he got really sick. Neither of us were working. We had no income. If we hadn't lived there, we could have been homeless. So it was like a blessing and a curse because family was helping us.
That's
but we couldn't leave.
Back when I was first relearning how to talk, and I was in a wheelchair and all that crap, and had to relearn how to walk and talk and do all that, and dealt with this crap during the middle of it, which at least with a head injury, my memory's bad, so I get to
I
don't
remember any of that stuff going on whenever we were in the midst of his like issues with all of his brain injury stuff. I don't remember a bunch of it, but I think
it's almost like we tuned it out.
We by the end of it, I think we just had gotten so used to things happening, and people would come in to see us. I mean, especially there when he was really bad, people would come and stay with us to help me out, and they would say things to us like, did you hear that? Like, what's that knocking around your kitchen? Or what's that sound upstairs? What's that knocking sound? And we would almost just like, nothing. Like, because there was no sense. After a while. Yeah, we had gotten used to it. We knew most people aren't going to believe you. And so we just like got to a point where we just ignored it. We made an agreement without really discussing it that we weren't going to talk about it. We also had very, very briefly discussed putting an EVP or an electronic voice phenomena recorder out just to see what happened, because we got into the whole paranormal activity kicks. We thought, ooh, let's put a video camera out. Let's put a tape recorder out. But we were both way too chicken because we knew something would be caught. Something would be said, not to mention that to me is opening up a communication. That's inviting it and saying, like, oh, here you go, which I'm not saying.
Yeah. So
super clear, Jesus is here.
I tell you what, we couldn't really tell how relieved we were until we actually did move out. And it was like this massive weight had lifted off of us. And we were like, oh my God, is this what normal people feel like?
Yeah, like when we were finally able to leave, first of all, I think it's telling that when we left that house, it was in like 2 days. It was like we decided to leave, boom, we were out. And I think part of that was us being like, we wanted out so bad.
And something else just popped up in my head. We struggled to have kids for so long, and you got pregnant with Bradley
a year after we moved into that other place. Yeah,
very soon after we moved, you got pregnant. So I mean, I'm not saying that had anything to do with it, but stress can take and affect things like that. We were definitely stressed out.
And I do think that in some of these situations, whether it's a negative, like whether it's the house itself or whether it's something that's within the house, I've heard other people talk about this where it can almost start to affect your outside life, like outside of the house, and make things happen or make you be in such a negative space that that bad things happen more. And it almost traps you there. It almost like it doesn't want you to leave. And it definitely felt that way because towards the end of it, I mean, before things looked up for us, we were literally trapped there. We were trapped there and we knew it and it knew it. And that last night was just like...
And it tortured us.
It did. And the last night we were there, I think we both didn't really sleep because we were just too excited to get the hell out of there. And our first night in our new house, or our townhouse, I think we slept on the couch in the living room, and there was a set of stairs behind that couch, and never once did we ever feel weird about having a staircase behind us or there were walls and things. Never. And even here, things have happened here.
No.
But not really. Things that I was like, wait a minute, was that? And I think you get almost PTSD from living in a haunted house. So when you go to another house, anything that happens, you're like, is it back?
Even our dogs were relieved when we moved out. I remember sitting in my computer one time, working on some stuff, and my dog was sitting in my lap, and we both hear, because it was at the end of the hallway, we hear the footsteps, and we were the only ones in the house. Well, I was the only one in the house with the dogs, and we hear the footsteps coming up the hallway, and I knew it wasn't just me, because before I had even turned my head to look, my dog's ears perked up, and she's looking down the hallway, and we hear the footsteps come to the door, and I would expect to see someone standing there, door's wide open, no one's there. And I'm like, okay, just going to watch the screen here, just going to ignore that, nobody's there.
I mean, and it was just that so many things happened there. And again, some of these things weren't even things that we at the time thought were paranormal, but looking back, like the refrigerators.
It was like a horror movie. It like starts off with the little stuff.
Out. Remember how many refrigerators did we have go completely out to the point where it smelled like things had died in the basement. There was weird crawl spaces everywhere. There was, just it was a very old house.
Wasn't it that little tricycle underneath the house?
No.
There were shotgun shells under the house. I know that.
Yeah, and there was a chair, like a little kid's chair under there, and like little basket stuff. But your family that lived there before had left this creepy ass doll that sat on the fireplace, remember?
Yeah.
And we never moved it. We were too afraid that it had something to do with it, so we never moved it. But we freaking hated that thing. And we moved. I know the movers were like going around picking stuff up. We were like, nope, leave it. Do not touch that. That is not coming with us. Hell no. No.
Don't want it.
But there's a lot more we could get into. But again, take it, you know, how you want to. We know how we felt there. And for me, a big part of it is the feeling of it all. It's not necessarily what happened. It's how it felt. And it's all of the things together and when they happened and how they happened. And just the way that as soon as we would step out of that door, we would feel lighter. You'd feel relief. And it wasn't just us. I had plenty of family and friends that would come over and same thing. Nobody, and his family that lived there before us would never say anything. They always made it like, oh, nothing ever happened. So we don't know. We did some research, but I never found if anything ever happened there. I think there was one other owner before his family that lived in that house, but we couldn't find anything. None of the neighbors knew anything. So I don't know if it was because it was vacant for so long.
Yeah.
Maybe there was something shady going on there.
That MFO was burying bodies underneath the foundation or something.
Something was happening there. It just not a good situation. And there's plenty more that happened there that we could tell you about, but this video would be forever long. So,
well, I hope you guys did enjoy this. It's just a fun little thing we decided to do in honor of Halloween. Tell some scary stories of stuff that happened to us at our little haunted house. So, hope you guys enjoyed it.
If you like these kind of videos, let us know. Again, this isn't like the regular thing we're going to do on this channel. We're not turning this into a story time channel. We just thought, since we're taking a break because of the move, this would be a fun, seasonal, Halloween-related video that some of you might enjoy. So
just put up for shits and giggles.
So give it a like if you liked it, and we'll see you guys hopefully very soon. Bye, guys.